All right.
Yes, so I started sharing these affirmations every day. That resonated with a lot of people. And so over time, people started asking me, well, do you have a book? Oh, we would like a book. And people were actually making their own book, meaning they would gather these affirmations. Maybe they would put it on sticky notes, put it up in the bathroom, or just write them down. And so I decided to put a book together. Part of the inspiration from the book was my travels throughout the Caribbean. In December of 2016, I went to the island of Guadeloupe. I met a young lady there. Her name is Omitola. So I did a initiation ceremony for her, hand of Ifa ceremony. And being there gave me some ideas for how to put the book together. So the book became a collection of these affirmations, as well as essays inspired by my travels throughout Guadeloupe, throughout St. Croix, where I'm from, Jamaica, and Nigeria as well. But I also touch on other things that I know are relevant to our times, things like climate change. I also included a section on finance because I know that finance is something that's often neglected when we talk about spirituality, and I felt it's important to talk about it because so many people are suffering in so many different ways, just across the board. Mm-hmm. And so I know the more financial literacy we have, then the stronger our communities can be, and then the things that are meaningful to us can be achieved. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. And so now your family members, your son,
yes,
also went with you to
That's
Nigeria,
correct.
right?
Yeah, so what brought me to Ifa initially was a crisis within my family. My son was going through a rough time. He was 16 at the time. So he started getting into trouble, arrests, problems with the police, problems at school. Um, and I wanted to get some insight into my son, so I went to see a Ifa priest who was in Oakland at the time. And I went there not because I wanted to be in the tradition. I went there because my back was against the wall. I wanted to get some insight into my son. So he told me some things about my son, but then he also told me some things about myself. And he said that, well, this is your path. He told me some things about the future that just made sense to me, that just resonated. Things clicked. Then I began to see my son as a messenger. I began to realize that, well, if he didn't go through this, I would not be on this path. And so I ended up accepting this calling and saying, well, if this is what I'm meant to do, well, then I should go to Africa. I should look deeper into this. So I took my son with me to Nigeria. We went to Ile-Ife, Nigeria. I was initiated into the Ifa tradition as a Babalawo. I was mentored by many people. And then my son came back. And my son is a different person now. He's changed. He's a responsible man, father of 4 beautiful kids, businessman. So when I look at my son, I see a miracle. And so when I talk to people, whether they're clients or whether they're people on my Facebook page, I like to encourage them to think that, where we are in life right now, whatever it is that we're struggling or we're facing, is not necessarily today is not necessarily tomorrow. I like to come with that energy of hope because things can change for the better for all of us, regardless of what our struggle is, whether it's emotional struggle, whether it's a financial struggle, whether it's a relationship struggle. I feel that the energy of hope is definitely something that I strongly encourage.
So now, when for those out there that don't have understanding what Ifa is, what would you say the type of things that you have encountered when your first divination or your first connection to Ifa? What was that thing that kind of beyond the crisis and the divination, but what kind of drew you even to Ifa itself? Because there's so many different forms of divinations that you could have gone through or gone to.
I would say that in my own case, what it was there's something in my spirit or my soul that recognized that this was part of my destiny. And so at the time when I had that divination done, I knew about Ifa, but I honestly felt it wasn't for me. So I knew about it, but I felt, well, this isn't my path. I know about it. I know about it intellectually, but it's not for me. But at that moment when that reading was done, it became clear to me that, okay, no, there's something here. And to be honest, there are times when I look at my life now and I say, well, is this really true? To be honest. But then I look at the impact that this work is having around the world. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
And again, and I guess part of my message to people here is that there are things about each one of us as human beings that's beyond our own rational understanding, beyond our own intellectual understanding. And so there's more to all of us than we really recognize. For every one of us on planet Earth, I think there's a whole lot more. But once in a while we might get a glimpse of this, but sometimes we don't. So we're often in a sleepwalking state, I would say, to our own potential and to what our own lives could be. And so our homework, if you want to call it that, is to wake up. And sometimes what happens is that we're either forced to wake up, or sometimes it can happen on our own, but sometimes things have to happen, or I would say this, our ancestors have to move things around to wake us up.
I like that, because even in the book you talk about how you not only went to Ife and found that understanding, but you also went into, like you said, St. Croix, you went into Jamaica, you went to a few different places and began to see those connections.
Yes.
And how do you, when you saw those, or when you had that impact or had that connection to those other systems that are related in a lot of ways to...
Yeah, and what I would say is that, the first part of the book begins with tips for following purpose or finding purpose in life. And what I've learned and what I'm still learning is that if we go back and look at our lives, all of us, even if we go back 5 years or 10 years or 15 years or however old we are, if we look carefully, we will see clues there as to not only who we are, but what our destiny might be. So a lot of things that, what I like to say, what I feel is that our ancestors, the spirit guides, what they're doing many times is they're training us all along, or they're setting up like stages for us to grow from or evolve from. But these things can't be done all at once because it would be too overwhelming for us. We would have no direction in life. So sometimes people feel like, well, if I know everything or whatever, then I'll be more empowered or whatever, but that's not really true. We'd be all over the place because it would be like dropping a child who is in 3rd grade and dropping advanced math, chemistry, physics, all at once, and saying, well, why don't you get it? Or expecting the child to grasp all these things. It's no different. So